Hi, welcome to the April edition of More or Less. I'm Peggy.
I'm Cody.
I'm James.
We're really excited to be here celebrating Limb Loss Awareness Month. Did you both know that April is Limb Loss Awareness Month?
I did.
Yeah,
James,
I
did you know
learned
that?
that
Yeah.
last year, and it became the most important month to me.
Oh, awesome. It's exciting. It's exciting. It's a time to kind of celebrate not only the advances that have been made, but some of the issues that still linger, and to let people know what it's really like to live with a limb, because or without a limb, because there are 507 amputations every single day in this country. So
Show me shirt.
chances,
Show
exactly.
me shirt. There you
There you
go.
go.
507.
If you and that shirt's available through Liner Wand. Linerwand.com. You can order your shirts. Profits go to charity. But with 507 amputations every single day, the chances that you are going to know somebody very well who has had an amputation within your life are great. So Limb Loss Awareness Month is really an opportunity to where the community can share their collective stories and their individual stories to kind of destigmify. Is that a word? I'm going to go
It is
with it.
now.
Yeah,
I'm
it
going to go
works.
with
It
it.
works.
To kind of, take the fright and the fear out of it. People have, I don't know how I could ever live without a limb. And it's one of people's, I think, large primal fears in a way. And this is an opportunity to share your story about, living a full life and living an adventurous life and living a happy life after the loss of a limb. So that hopefully when other people become amputees, or somebody close to them becomes an amputee, they won't be as afraid and they won't feel as alone. One huge
Yeah.
way of being able to do that is through sharing your story. There's so much power in everybody's individual personal story, but it, there are some caveats to it. And that's really what we wanted to break down in today's vlog. So
Mhm.
I'm going to pass it over to Cody, because you have been an amputee for the longest. So you have the most experience sharing your story from childhood up through adulthood. So take it away, Cody.
All right. Thank you very much. And I'm just barely the longest, you know, uh, living with this on here. So, growing up, I was amputated at 3 weeks of age. I didn't know any different, and as a small child, I would just tell people, "Yeah, I lost my leg to a blood clot." That was it. That was my story for quite some time, because I didn't really know how to process it, how to shape anything around it. Um, I hadn't met a lot of amputees outside of little children who were also amputees, right? So as time went on, I actually got to meet people who were um, adults that were amputees, and they were able to talk about their stories more in depth and help me to really, ex- you know, extrapolate, if you want to call it that, extract a lot more information even from myself and dig deeper. So over time, I was able to shape my story into something that was, effective and comprehensive and total in a succinct, short expression, so that I could give that story to anyone that would come up to me, whether it be a child on the street, or a clerk at a gas station, or a physician who I'm going to meet with, and then other amputees. So what I like to tell people, based on how I've come to be able to shape my story through interaction with other amputees and the community at large, is really, first off, um, make sure you're comfortable with what you're sharing. Okay, I want to say that first and foremost. Make sure you're comfortable with the content that you share and the amount of content that you share. Right?
And you
You
don't
should.
always have to share.
No,
It's
you
okay
don't
to
always
say
have to
no.
share. Yeah. People can ask you and you can say, "Hey, I'm just really not in it right now," or whatever, or you don't have to say anything. You don't owe anybody anything. Not
Yes.
really, right?
Yeah.
Um, and maybe that's uncomfortable for them, but at the same time, it's positive for the storyteller. It's been a positive thing for me to tell my story in general, right? I see it as something I can give back to the community, and it makes me feel good inside. And I think a lot about, with children especially, if I tell them my story, then that's one less ignorant person in the world, right? Not a judgment on them. Being ignorant of something is not a negative. It's just
It's
something
not.
that's just absent, right?
The
They just
lack of information, right?
exactly, they lack that information. And so now if they're around their buddies and they see someone with one leg, and that buddy is saying something negative about the person with one leg, they can say, hey, I met somebody that had one and they're pretty cool, or they shared with me a lot about what's going on, they seem pretty normal, right? So there's a positive aspect to this, and you can find a lot of purpose in it. So that's what I want to make sure everybody's comfortable with that, first of all. But like, know your audience. Know, if you're talking to a child, use terms that they can understand, right? Something that they understand is, I lost my leg when the blood stopped flowing to it, and that you need the blood to flow there, right? They don't understand words like blood clot and catheter needle and all of these kinds of things, right? That are part of my story. But when I'm talking to a physician or another patient who's an adult, that have gone through something medical, or have had medical terminology in their life, I can express it in those ways, right? And it's not a judgment on them either. It's just a matter of being appropriate. Um, and then even then, share as much as I want or as little as I want in those settings. But I start off with really just shaping, who I am, how long I've been an EPT. I talk about my experiences with it, how I live my life around it, and that just builds trust and confidence that I know what I'm talking about, right? And when I come to somebody and I say, yeah, I lost my leg and I work with amputees, but they don't really know what that means. If I say, I've been living with limb loss for 39 years, I've, been working in the field for 20 professionally, and I've got, these 8 kids, and I'm married for so long, and I build these things and I do these things in my yard. Well, then they can say, wow, this guy really, he's steeped in the culture of amputation and limb difference, and he, keeps living his life to this, great degree. I can trust what he's saying when he comes to me with this information, right? And I don't share that with everybody. I do like to share a lot of that with, like, um, new amputees, right? And there also, I want to say one thing about talking to new amputees, especially for those people who are out there, like peer support groups, um, peer support individuals. Remember, and this, if you've lived with limb loss or limb difference, that losing your limb is like losing a loved one. So be compassionate, be understanding, and shape your story in a way that is kind and empathetic in everything that you're saying there. And then I also share a few details about what I wear, what I like to wear, what I don't like. And this kind of gets into more of the, who's my audience, because, kids aren't going to understand all of that. Um, and then, also just I share my, like, physical journey and my emotional journey and my spiritual journey with people, if they're willing to hear it. And I fish for those kinds of things, and I shape a conversation around just the audience again and the setting. If I'm talking to somebody on the street, it's going to be a very short conversation. But if I'm talking to somebody at my house that's a new friend, we can get deep into it.
Right.
So yeah, that's what I do, and that's how I use it. And I like to bring hope with it, if possible, to people who are.
Fantastic. I think that sharing your experiences and framing it, how long you've been an amputee and how long you've been in the profession, really does add a lot of credibility to whatever you're going to say next, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. James, what about you? How do you share your story?
Well, the 38 years I've been an amputee, just a little bit behind Cody. Cody was out changing the world while I was in diapers. He's much older than I am. So
Wow.
yeah,
Ooh.
yeah. So what I was going to say is this: for me, the challenge was I was 11, and so I knew what it was like to have a leg, but it was the limb difference was so different, and with 33 surgeries leading up to it, I always had to explain different aspects of my story. The trying to preserve the limb, and explain why it was so different, why I was so limited, and some of the restrictions I had growing up was different. And then so when they came to me and said we're going to be losing the limb, then it was a lot of fear. And so afterwards, trying to becoming an amputee, explaining to people that would approach me, um, I would say kids in the inner city were very cruel. Um, they
Oh,
would just say, "Hey, I heard you had a fake leg," and then it would be like an insult, and so I would deny it. Like, no, I wear a brace or whatever, or I would often wear pants and try not to walk when the crowd would move. Walk when the crowd would move rather than to watch me walk individually. Trying to avoid them being able to see the difference in my gait. Um, when they would ask, it was very challenging to share because they really didn't care for me as an individual. It was curiosity. And I didn't know how to answer it. And I didn't know other amputees at the time. Now, looking back with the mockery and things like that I faced, um, it would not have served me well to try to go into depth or share an emotional story because that wasn't the audience for it.
right.
But as I matured and grew, um, there were other people that would ask, and I would be able to say I lost it as a kid, and that would suffice for some. Then others, like as Cody said, you can go into more detail and share with them that, hey, this is genetics. For me, I didn't have a choice in it, but I've learned to adapt my life. I've learned that when new amputees are there, it really is traumatic. It's the fear, unknown. Will I ever be loved? Will um, will I ever be able to live a life? Will I drive a car? Um, will I ever have to be confident again? Or even when I get people who assume because I've worked to live a full life because of my size, people assumed I was in the military, you know, and I
Right.
almost seemed disappointed when they like, so where did you serve? I was like, I did work at McDonald's. I didn't serve a million of those burgers, but like no, like I served by impacting lives. You go from stages where sharing your limb loss story was kind of something that um, you held back to people who really were invested in you. That worked for me for a while. I didn't want to share. I just surmised it. Lost it when I was a kid. Nothing could be done. Tried to save it, couldn't. Quick as I could. Then when little kids would come, I would just share with them with like, well, when I was a kid, one leg was shorter than the other. And ultimately, they said the only way to make it even is to amputate part of it so that I could be like you. Very simple ways of trying to make it easy. And then when I would meet clinicians, then I would go into more detail. And it was important. And then to recall the different pains, the phantoms, things like this that I experienced to share with other amputees, because you can become inspirational, you can become encouraging, you can become a great story of influence and impact, but it takes time. At first I had to become my own hero, to be honest, and being
Oh, I
able to
like
share my
that.
story, you know. And so for me, I like this, the fact that there are 507 amputees every day, meaning that there are people walking into what I've experienced, and I need to set the example. So me sharing my story now, I share it everywhere I can. I share it with passion, I share it with purpose, and I share with the understanding that this is life changing. It's not a small thing. And those people who are after also remember, and Cody, I'm sure you faced this, where there were people um, who ask without really paying attention. Hey, how'd you lose that anyway? And then they're looking over like, yeah,
Right.
so what happened? And so you
Mhm.
realize, okay, that audience with it, they don't understand really what they just want a summation.
Yeah.
I was a kid. Yeah, I was a kid, nothing I could do about that. And they're
Right.
like, okay, man, oh, it must suck. No, actually it doesn't, you know. There's nothing I can't do. And like, oh wow,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
really have to change it. Because they'll say things, I'm sure you've heard this. I can't imagine living my life.
Every time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Every time.
And that goes back to that's why I think it's one of the great fears of so many people. And that's why Limb Loss Awareness Month is so important, to try to dispel that before it does happen to people.
Hmm.
Mm. Peggy, you mentioned that, we talked about the length of time that we've been amputees. What about you?
So I had an accident in uh 1998, and I finally had the amputation in 2003. So I am going on 20 years. I tried for 5 years to save my foot, 20 surgeries. I spent my 20s on methadone and Percocet and a walking boot and crutches, and was miserable trying to save something that wasn't working for me because of the fear of living with an amputation. I didn't know what it was about. Um, and Cody and I were talking about this yesterday. I Looking back at who I was then, I don't regret going through those surgeries, because I know definitively I made the right choice. There was nothing else I could have done to have the life that I have now. I wish that I had had a role model or somebody to look to help make that decision easier, because I didn't have anybody. And I think that that's what drives my passion for making sure that people don't feel alone. And part of that is my story. So mine is I have a little bit of a different experience sharing stories, because I have a lot of people who knew me before my amputation. And then I go to college, and then you start jobs, and then you reconnect with high school friends, and it's always like the shock on their face when they see me walk with a prosthetic, because they'd never seen it before. Last time they saw me, I had both biological limbs. So I always have to take it as you know, a lot of people don't want to ask, and they do that shifting, and they're trying to pretend like they don't see it. I'm like, I know you see it. It's okay.
Hmm.
So I usually, in those situations, I just try to address the elephant in the room right away without making a big deal of it. So if I meet somebody, at a party or at my reunion, I'll just say, I'm just going to sit down for a second. I need to fix my leg. And then I can take it as an opportunity to go, oh, yeah, I had an accident or whatever. And then I can address it. But that moment of when they put it together, like, oh, this is different. And you can see it like moving in their mind, like, do I say something? Don't I say something? I always want people to ask. I would rather people ask than hide away and be afraid. um, when I talk to kids, because mine was caused by an accident, I didn't want to go into, a preschool, kindergarten, first grade class and say, I had an accident and they cut off my leg, right? I didn't want to scare kids. I didn't want them to think that obviously it is something that can happen to them. And that's the overarching reason that I share my story. But I don't want them to be fearful that it could be something that's imminent and to live their life in fear. And I was worried that by going in and framing it that way. So I've learned to just say, I had an accident. The doctors really tried to fix my foot, but they decided the best thing to do was to make a new one for me. Done. And then it's always like, that is so cool. Let me see your robot leg or whatever.
Right.
So that's kind of how I frame it. With adults, again, like Cody and like James, what you said, some people ask just because they don't know what else to say too.
Hmm.
When you see somebody that you haven't seen for years, they don't really care. Then I'll just say, oh, I had an accident. Yeah, whatever. And then they move on. Or I'll have people who go the other realm and will ask like every single detail. And I'm like, it dude, I haven't seen you in 30 years. I really don't want to go into like the weeds of my life with you. So then it's hard to kind of back away
Right.
And so, it's a
That,
dance and you have to kind of
yeah. Have you
frame it
guys ever had anyone just reach down and like touch it?
all the time,
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
time. I will
I
don't
tell
get
you,
that as
I'm gonna
much.
I've had the one experience that haunts me, and I want to tell people, if you're not a member of the community or if you have kids, please don't punish them for asking anybody,
That's
what
right.
happened. Don't. I had a parent, and it still haunts me. I was standing in line at Target, and the the child asked me, why do you have a robot leg? Because that's what they called it. And the dad turned around and slapped their kid in front of me for asking. And
Wow.
my heart just leapt because, you know, it's something that I still like think about, like that poor child. All they wanted to know was, hey, what happened? That's really, and it wasn't even, they didn't even frame it like negative. They thought it
No,
was
no.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when he said robot, the kid was like, you are
I'm a
like Iron
transformer,
Woman."
right? I
That's
mean,
right.
Yeah.
I'm the coolest one in Target at that moment because,
That's
you
it.
can buy a transformer doll, but I'm a living one.
Mhm.
So
But so yeah, you've got an ignorant father there,
exactly,
right? Perpetuating ignorance,
exactly.
right? And if there was just this avenue that we could all just broach of education and understanding, as a community, where one, I want to come alongside you as a peer and say, I encourage you to go out and be bold with it, become in your level of comfort and everything, but stand behind you and say it is okay to share.
Hmm.
It's a good thing what you're doing for the entire community that you live in. All of our society needs this, right? And you're contributing so much in every interaction that you have. It's like, you know um it's like Pay It Forward. I don't know if you've ever seen like that
Absolutely.
movie. You,
That's right.
one touch has
Hmm.
multiple touches, and then all of those have more and more, and
Ripple
they
effect.
branch out. It has a ripple
Absolutely.
effect, right?
The the Yeah, absolutely. You're right.
Yeah. It,
My mind was going somewhere and I don't. Oh, so obviously, when you walk in and your prosthesis is visible, automatically their interest is going to be piqued just because you're different. But I've also learned in situations when you don't necessarily want to share your story or you don't want to bring attention. I remember like back to school nights. I don't want to go in there and take away from my child's experience, or plays, things like that, because ultimately the eyes come on me. I dress very carefully when I go to events. If I'm going to go to a wedding, I try to make sure that I'm either wearing long pants or a long dress. I don't want to outshine the bride just because I have a prosthesis,
Mhm.
so it's okay to do those things too. It took me a long time to realize that no, it's not that I'm hiding myself, it's that I'm going into a situation where I don't want to necessarily always share my story. I don't want all of the eyes on me, and sometimes that's okay too.
Or create the questions that your kid like, hey, your mom or dad has, but even if in the case where you can't, um, I think about um my kids, whenever I show up, that they've as I've matured and as I've improved my gait and all those things, which takes time,
Hmm.
and to unlearn some bad habits if you don't have a mentor, a coach, someone to develop you at the right place, uh, it to have with my size and come in, and so there are different questions that happen. But being able to go into any setting, share your story when necessary, but or choose not to is a true blessing. Not every amputee will have that opportunity because it's sometimes pants. Cody, like, is it difficult sometimes to get pants that don't interfere with your prosthetic?
not really, not for me.
Okay, I'm sure you've heard other amputees or above the knee say,
Yeah, I mean, I hear that often. For me, I haven't had that issue since I was when I was a little kid. Yes, I don't wear like cover devices or anything
Oh,
like that to
You were
fill it
skinny
out.
jeans?
Yeah, I do. I can wear skinny jeans. And my wife would prefer that I get it filled out in the pant leg, but I don't care for it. I feel like it's kind of cumbersome. And that's just my preference, and that's okay if you want it filled out and everything. Um, but anymore that like as time has gone by and as these things have become more publicized in the media, people are more accepting
It's
of
the cool
having your
factor too.
hardware, yeah,
You're
your hardware
instant, I mean,
exposed and things like that.
especially among kids, you're instantly cool. And I
Yeah.
think I just want to step back. It's not that I don't share it with my kids' classes, because I do. It's just I want my child to be able to make his first impression first, and for them
Mhm.
to get to know my child before they know my child as the one with the robot mom.
Yeah. So what else were you saying there, James?
Oh no, I just for me, all those experiences, and in letting that remember your personage as an amputee is more important than anything, guys.
Thank
You
you.
know, and that is it is something that has happened to us, but it is not the defining definition of who Cody is.
Absolutely.
Peggy,
Mhm.
you are unique. You bring so much to the table outside of your cool story. And so don't get lost in that. I am this, and this happened to me. Therefore, that's all there is. You're so much more dynamic than that. And
You're
keep
a human
sharing.
being.
Yeah, share your life story. Look, Cody has 8 kids.
Yep.
I mean,
That
he's a
probably gets more attention than your leg a lot of
yeah.
times.
It
So watch
does.
this. So that when they're talking, if one of when it depends on which kid is friends circle around. He's not even Cody. He's John's dad, or like I'm James's dad, or whatever. You lose Peggy. You're your kid's mom,
Yep.
rather than you lose your identity anyway. And so what's wonderful about us is that this environment that you guys have created here, what we're talking about, limb loss awareness, is important to us every month, but April especially, because it gives us a chance to get others to pay attention, focus on it. If there are 507 entering this world every day, then we have a voice for that will echo well into the future.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I think that's a fabulous way to stop.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah. So happy Limb Loss Awareness Month, everyone. And I hope that if you feel comfortable, you take the opportunity to pay it forward in the community, share your story, maybe with somebody who doesn't know, or, maybe go a little bit more in depth or reach out or not. It's okay. If you just, if it is enough for you to reveal your amputation or your prosthesis, that's great too. And if you don't feel comfortable doing it, that's all right, because we've got your back and there are a lot of people who will. So don't feel pressured to share your story if you don't want to.
And I just want to say, you have value no matter what.
Absolutely.
With a limb, without a limb, you have value, and you're not alone in your journey at
I
all.
love that.
That's awesome, guys.
Cody, do you want to talk about sponsorship of the vlog real quick?
So this podcast, thank you, Peggy, is brought to you all by Baker Prosthetics and Orthotics, and we are here for all of your needs and care. We can do everything from providing your prosthetics to giving you some counsel on what to do in life as an amputee and point you in the right direction. So we are here for
Absolutely.
you.
Awesome. Happy April, everyone.
Happy April.
Bye.
Happy April.
Thank you.
Bye.